I have some great news. I'm joining the ranks of great Australians who are being awarded an Order of Australia. That's right, I'm taking my place alongside other Australian greats like Daniel Andrews and Scott Morrison. My Order of Australia has just arrived. Give me a sec to unbox it. Ah, it's not here. Well, I guess that's what you get for shopping at Aldi. All jokes aside, it really seems like the fastest way to get an Order of Australia these days is to be a human rights abuser. And I don't say that to be disrespectful to the recipients who do actually deserve recognition. In fact, they are the ones who should be the most upset, because the meaning and the value of an Order of Australia is being destroyed by the fact that some of the recipients are just benefiting from a state-run circle jerk. To get an award, you need to be nominated, and that's a relatively democratic process because, well, anyone can nominate anyone to be recognised through the Order of Australia. So far, so good. Nominees do need to have referees, though, and that's a little bit less democratic because the more people you know to put into that referral column, the better of a chance you have. But things really go wrong when you look at the fact that nominations are then considered by the Council of the Order of Australia, which meets twice a year, and they have to consider that nominees must have demonstrated achievement at a high level, made contributions over and above what might be reasonably expected through paid employment, or have made a voluntary contribution to the community which stands out from other volunteers. Which is all well and good as a set of criteria for an award. But there are two great problems here. The council that decides which nominations are to be then handed on and recommended to the Governor-General, well, that council, those members, are all politically appointed. And then the person who has the final say, the Governor-General, well, they are also politically appointed. Now, to be clear, there are many deserving recipients of these awards, and I support Australia having a way to formally recognise people who do go above and beyond. That's all well and good. But in amongst the worthy recipients, we have the other ones, the politicians who are just lining up to be given awards by people who are appointed by politicians. This is why, in my opinion, the King's Honours, or the Order of Australia, have been debased in the last few years especially, becoming nothing more than a circle jerk for the politically in crowd to award to each other for doing the things that are fashionable amongst themselves. If those responsible for these awards don't correct this slide and fast, then it will not be long before an Order of Australia carries as much weight as something out of a Weet-Bix packet. My name is Topher Field, this is the Topher Project, and I help busy people like you to keep up with the world as it changes around you. I am 100% viewer supported, and you can help me to keep the Topher Project going by buying me a coffee via the button on my website, topherfield.net, or by checking out my books, my DVDs, my t-shirts, and much more at goodpeoplebreakbadlaws.com. Thank you so much for your support. I love doing what I do, and I'm grateful to every single one of you that makes it possible for me to continue the Topher Project. Now, the Council for the Order of Australia has 19 members, and they are, functionally speaking, the gatekeepers. They are the people who decide which nominations make it to the Governor-General's desk and which ones do not. Each state and territory appoints one member to the Council at the discretion of the government of that particular state or territory. So already that's 8 out of the 19 members of the Council who are directly politically appointed by a government or politician in Australia. Then there are 7 community representatives. Now, these are appointed by the Governor-General directly. Now, the Governor-General, of course, is appointed by the King, but in reality, the King just rubber stamps whoever the Prime Minister says they want in the role. So whether we like it or not, that's now at least 15 of the 19 members of the Council for the Order of Australia who are either directly appointed by politicians or who are appointed by people who were appointed by politicians, making their selection inherently political. Now, there's 3 more members who are included on the council because they hold positions of political or other Australian power. There is the Chief of the Defence Force, there is a member from the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet, and a member from the Federal Executive Council. And finally, there is the chair. Now, at present day, that is Miss Shelley Reyes, and the Governor-General's website says this about her. She has significant governance experience through previous roles as the inaugural co-chair of Reconciliation Australia, vice chair of the National Australia Day Council, vice chair of the Fred Hollows Foundation, as well as current roles as board members of KPMG Australia and board member of the organising committee for the Olympic Games and the Paralympic Games for Brisbane in 2032. You don't get into any of those positions unless you are a part of the in crowd and you hold all of the right fashionable in views. So it is fair to say that every single person in the Order of Australia Council has had to pass a de facto purity test. They've had to meet with the approval of the existing governments within Australia and have views which are sufficiently fashionable according to the politics of our time. But that is still only scratching the surface. Let's get more specific. Let's talk about last year's decision to award the Companion of the Order of Australia to Daniel Andrews, the former Premier of Victoria. In any reasonable world, you wouldn't allow someone who appointed people to the deciding committee to then be eligible for an award from that committee. But sadly, this isn't a reasonable world. The Victorian representative to the Council for the Order of Australia is Joshua Pulls, and by all accounts, he seems like a decent, hard-working and very successful public servant. Okay, I am putting aside how I feel about the public service as a whole. If I put that aside, Mr. Pulls doesn't seem like a terrible human being, and his career is genuinely impressive. But in my view, he has significant conflicts of interest when it comes to considering an award for former Premier Daniel Andrews, not least of which because he worked for Premier Daniel Andrews for a couple of years as the Executive Director of the Victorian Department of Premier and Cabinet, which was the first couple of years of Daniel Andrews' time as Premier. He was then appointed to the Council for the Order of Australia by the Victorian government, the government that he was working for, and that appointment was decided on either directly by Premier Daniel Andrews or through some process that was conducted during Daniel Andrews' first term. His appointment was in 2015. Now, whilst serving on the council, Mr. Pulls also worked as the official secretary to the Governor of Victoria, the Governor of Victoria being someone who is appointed by the Premier of Victoria. Now again, this isn't personal against Mr. Pulls. He has an impressive resume and someone has to fill those roles. It's impressive that he's managed to do that. But it illustrates the problem with appointing people from the in crowd to then judge the awards that go to other people in the in crowd. How can we allow people whose careers depend on the favour of politicians to then participate in the handing out of awards to those politicians? I'm not accusing Mr. Pulls or any other council member of any specific corruption, but this should be considered at a minimum a bad look, a conflict of interest, and in my opinion, it gives rise to the appearance of an opportunity for corruption. From 2011 to 2013, Mr. Pulls was actually the Assistant Private Secretary to the then Prince of Wales and Duchess of Cornwall, now the King and Queen of England. And if I had to guess, I'd say that Mr. Pulls is probably trying to line himself up to be a future governor of a state in Australia or perhaps even the Governor-General of Australia in due course. I'm presuming, but that's what it looks like to me. He is building the kind of resume that would open such doors for him in the future if he decided that that's what he wanted. And hey, if my guess is correct, then good on him. But whether or not I'm right about his ambitions, whether or not he actually wants to be a governor himself, he certainly seems likely to continue to work in roles that are appointed by politicians. Working either for politicians, for government departments, or for people who are themselves appointed by politicians. And if that is indeed his future career path, then, well, he has a vested personal interest to stay in the good books of all of the up-and-coming politicians as well as the existing established ones, because those up-and-coming politicians someday may be the people who are deciding whether or not he gets the next job in his progression up the ladder. Ultimately, perhaps one of them may decide whether or not he gets to be the governor. Now, Mr. Pulls is just one such example. More than half of the people currently on the Council for the Order of Australia have similarly close ties to the people who appointed them to the council. And I have similar concerns about the potential for conflicts of interest and the creation of the perception of potential corruption, which is all just a nice and mealy-mouthed way of saying that I think the whole thing is just a circle jerk. And I'm not the only one to have noticed this. To their credit, the Sydney Morning Herald back in 2021 had this to say about it. The system seems skewed towards those who have the time and contact to lobby the council and to collect the referees whose opinions carry weight with its members, with that being the council's members. Some professional lobbyists specialise in greasing the wheels for nominations. The result is that the rich and powerful get more than a fair share of the gongs. The Herald, for instance, found that a quarter of the people who made the Australian Financial Review's Richest 200 list had been honoured. While the council is theoretically apolitical, former politicians also seem to be able to work the system. There are 30 separate fields of endeavour for which people can be nominated. No one has ever been awarded a Companion of the Order of Australia, an AC, which is the highest honour, for work in either the category of multiculturalism or disability. But there have been 30 ACs for contributions to Parliament and politics. Even when women or ordinary punters are honoured, they tend to be the lower level of Medal of the Order of Australia OAM or Member AM rather than the more prestigious AC or Officer AO gongs. In this year's list, 43 awards of AC and AO, only 13 went to women. Bearing in mind this year listed there is the 2021 list. Continuing on the quote, the granting of so many honours to politicians and businessmen is an affront to the democratic Australian spirit, which was the whole reason for establishing a national awards system. It also seems strange to recognise people just for doing jobs for which they are already well paid. End quote. I take that last part of that quote to be referring to politicians who are very well remunerated for the jobs they do. Now, that was an editorial from January 25th, 2021 in the Sydney Morning Herald. And I don't often say this, but I agree with the Sydney Morning Herald on this 100%. But again, that is just their long-winded and polite way of saying it's become a circle jerk. People who are appointed by politicians should not be handing out medals to those politicians, or frankly to any politicians, whether they were appointed by those individuals or not. In my opinion, anyone on the public payroll should be automatically excluded from any of these awards except in the most exceptional circumstances. I mean, okay, if the Prime Minister runs into a burning building to save a baby, then sure, that deserves an award. But right now, it looks like these politicians are getting awards simply for being the people who appointed the people who give out the awards. And that is tragic for those Australians who really do deserve these awards, those who truly do deserve recognition. When undeserving human rights abusers like Daniel Andrews and Scott Morrison get awards like this, they devalue them for everyone else. Any politician that says they care about these awards should prove they care by refusing to accept one. And any political appointee to the council should refuse to approve any awards for any politicians present or up and coming on the basis that that would be a conflict of interest for them. We can fix the whole system by simply saying that anyone on the public payroll is ineligible for an award and is also ineligible to be on the council that decides who gets the awards. In the meantime, the council and our politicians continue to trash the King's honours with each passing year. My name is Topher Field, this is the Topher Project, and I help busy people like you to make sense of the nonsense that unfolds all around us. I am 100% viewer supported, and you can help me to keep the Topher Project going by buying me a coffee via the button at topherfield.net, or you can check out my books, DVDs, t-shirts and more at goodpeoplebreakbadlaws.com. Thank you for watching to the end. Please like, comment, subscribe, and as always, stay free.